Hello, Dayton. Once again, welcome to the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. He is the creator of the Retirement Blueprint itself. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. Tim, how are you doing this week, buddy?
Doing great, Spike. How are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to see if I've got all my spelling correct, but I don't know what I'm doing. I've got letters and numbers and plans.
Oh my.
I have no idea. We have got to be talking about retirement planning for the viewers out there today. And there's so many different types of retirement plans and so many different ways to use them that Tim today wants to make sure that during our program, you're using your retirement plan properly as best you can. And then what do you do with it once you get to retirement, right? There's so many different things to do. But why is it different today retiring than it was for, let's say, our parents or even our grandparents? It just seems so much more complicated.
Well, it is, Spike. I mean, the rules changed. You know, for our parents and our grandparents, you worked at a company for 30 years, you stopped working there, and they sent you a check in the mailbox every month for the rest of your life. And that was the plan. And there was nothing to figure out. And what has happened is they have changed that, so very few people have a pension today. In fact, you know, if you're not a school teacher or state or federal employee or a very small select group of corporations, there's no pensions at all.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is we've seen a transition from the company being responsible for our retirement to us being responsible, to our viewers at home for being responsible for their retirement. And I mean, just think about it. I mean, you are an auto mechanic or you're a school teacher or you're, you know, and in addition to being an expert in your field, now you also have to figure out the complicated world of retirement
You
planning.
have to be a 20, 30, 40-year investing expert to make sure that you and your spouse are able to retire. And my question for Tim today is, since you help people with retirement planning every single day, how is this experiment going? How is it for most Americans when they come into your office? Are they using these plans properly? And actually, even before we get to that, let's start with the baseline. How many different alphabet soup, different kinds of retirement plans are there?
Oh, well, I mean, I've got a list of them here. So we have IRAs, Roths, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, 401as. We have TSP with the government plan, OPERS with the state, STRS for the teachers, there's PERS, there's SEPs, Simples, HSAs, the list continues to go on.
You said SEPs and Simples. So far, none of this is sounding simple to me at all. You started out with IRA and Roth. I thought you were saying IRA Roth, like it was a person, like maybe we need this person to help us figure out these retirement plans. But the confusing thing is that don't they all have different rules, different contribution limits? And so someone for myself, let's start out, if we work for an individual organization, I don't have the ability to look and invest in all of these. I usually only have what's available now that company makes available for me, correct?
Right, and that's pretty much the case for everyone out there. If you look at the different plans, and this is where it gets so confusing, is depending on where you work, depends on the plan that you have. But all the plans are different. Just like you said, the amount of money you can put in them changes. When you sign up for them changes. If you're self-employed, for example, there's certain plans that you can have that normal people that work at a company can't, and vice versa. You have the accessibility to them. For example, OPERS, so for the state employees out there, and deferred comp, you can't access any of that money until you actually retire. Whereas with a 401k at 59.5, you can do in-service rollovers. And so there's all these different rules, and it can be extremely confusing. And
along with these different rules, though, then there's also different, usually self-controlled elements of how much we contribute, right? There's what's known as matching in our 401k, but let's go back to that OPERS. Well, let's go back to the TSP. When we've got either state or a government fund, there's part of it that we get to contribute. There's some part that also comes from the employer entity, correct?
Right, and that's, again, one of the things when you're looking at OPERS, for example, most people that qualify under OPERS also have access to deferred comp. And I've talked to lots of people that didn't even know that they had access to deferred comp, which essentially works a lot like our normal 401k plan would, but it's through the state.
Right. And by deferred comp, let's be honest, again, because I try to stay away from jargon as much as we can, mostly to keep things simple for myself out there. But deferred comp, we're talking deferred compensation, meaning you're saving on your own.
Right.
And the deferred part, though, is a tax part, right?
It is. And so, like most retirement plans, the money is coming out of your paycheck pre-tax. So if you put $1 into the plan, an actual dollar is going into the plan. And then like you had mentioned, sometimes there's a match from the company on top of that. Or in the case of the state or federal government, a lot of times the government is making an additional contribution to your pension plan on your behalf as part of your employment benefit.
Okay, all right. And now, so the teachers, can we talk maybe a little bit more about this STRS? What is that one?
So STRS, or sometimes you hear it referred to as STRS, but STRS, State Teachers Retirement System.
Oh, that makes sense.
So in Ohio, the way that the State Teachers Retirement System, there is no opting in. If you're a teacher, you're opted in. So there's a contribution coming out that is going into STRS. But in addition to STRS, teachers also have access to a 403B, which is similar to a 401k in corporate world, but 403B is for teachers and nonprofits, but it's the same thing. It's another deferred compensation program, so the teachers can actually have money from their paycheck go into an additional savings vehicle that they control, that they get to make all the decisions on.
Okay, so we're going to continue to talk about retirement plans. There's so many different types. There are state plans, there are government plans, there are independent employer plans. There's individual plans, for instance, if you are your own personal contract, all different kinds. But what I want to go from next is with Tim, who is a retirement financial planning specialist, somebody who helps you put this together. I want to ask Tim about the kinds of investment choices that are inside there, and are we using them properly? So Tim, just a real quick thing. There's a phone number down at the bottom of the screen there, and we can be as informational as we want to about the show, but what you do is you help people on a daily basis figure this stuff out. So tell us a little bit about your complimentary review.
Yeah, so for the folks at home, if you have questions about what we're talking about today on the show or in shows past, you can give us a call at 855-684-3485 for a complimentary review. You can come in, you can meet our team, we get to meet you, and the most important thing we're going to do for you is we'll listen. I like to say every day, people bring in a box of puzzle pieces and we get to put them together for you. So this is your opportunity to do that.
All right, folks. Thank you so much, Tim. We've got to take a very short break. This is the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. If you would like your own complimentary review on if you are using your retirement plans properly, all you've got to do is call the phone number you see right here, 855-684-3485. More of the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton right after this.
Retirement is about choosing where you want to go and mapping out a plan to get there. That's why I created the Retirement Blueprint. Of course, things don't always go according to plan. Come learn how our team can help you avoid potential hazards and find alternate routes. We're here to do life with you and share your journey. Let us blueprint your life to keep you on track to make sure you get the most out of retirement. Are you on the road to success? Call us today for a complimentary review to find out. Let us plan your tomorrow today.
This is the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. Today we're talking about the complexity of retirement plans and how they've pretty much been put into our own laps to figure out. As you said, everything from the letters and the numbers and the plans, oh my, there's just so many things to wrap our heads around. So let's first talk about different options. What kinds of different options of these retirement plans were you talking about?
Well, and we could spend a whole show just talking about options. But I think for example, a 401k plan, and most companies now offer a version of a 401k, and it comes in different flavors. And so you have the ability to put money in pre-tax, like we were talking about earlier in the show, where the money comes out pre-tax, goes into the plan. You also can put money in post-tax it's called a Roth contribution. So this is post-tax money that's going to grow tax-free.
And just for the viewers and simple folks like myself, so to make sure we understand, where you're saying that we pay the taxes on it this year. So the whole thing with a 401k, when this came out essentially in 1978, was that taxes were much higher. And if we put money into this 401k, you don't have to pay taxes on that money this year. So let's say you put $10,000 in your 401k. You get to subtract that from what your tax burden is going to be for this year. The Roth is different, though. The Roth is you pay the piper right now. But what are the advantages of using a Roth down the road?
Well, and so it's a trade-off. If I get the tax deduction today, I get to defer those taxes down the road. Typically until at least 72, that's when the IRS makes us to start taking money out. With the Roth, I'm paying the taxes today on a much smaller number, right? But that's growing tax-free forever. And so I can get a small tax deduction today with a big tax bill down the road, or I can pay a smaller tax bill and not pay it at all.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the idea behind the contributions, and which one's right, which one.
Well, that's what I wanted to
right?
press you on. Do you have a preference one way or another, or do you say use 50-50? Use maybe both.
I like the combination. I really do. I like to have some.
So you're somebody who mixes all of your food on Thanksgiving together, gravy with the mashed potatoes and the meat. All right, same here. So maybe use a little bit, but it is also hard for you to determine because, again, you and I have talked about this a lot before. We've got to know the goals of your money. So before you can say to the entire broadcasting audience of Dayton, use both, you say, it depends on your situation, what you're trying to do with that money first, right?
It 100% depends. And so, one of the things that we're always clear with on the show is, we're bringing up topics. We're not giving advice. We can't give advice without actually talking to someone because everybody's situation is different. And so, when we're looking at some of these options for our viewer audience, it's really to help educate and to kind of get your mind thinking about what those different options are, and then to bring up subjects that maybe you hadn't thought about.
Right. Okay, so subjects other people we might not have thought about. You just were talking about the difference between the Roth and a regular, meaning the tax deferred. Now, what about all of those investment options in there? Think about this, folks. How many different investment choices do you have in your retirement plans that you're working? So in the TSP, for government employees, it's 5 choices, right?
Well, they've added some. So there's some target funds in there now.
Right.
So there is multiple options. The TSP is kind of special in that they're all indexes. So it's, a lot of times with 401ks, you'll have mutual funds inside the 401ks, and there's all these different options, and the money's actually managed. Inside of the TSP, these are actually indexes, and so there's no management of them being done on your behalf. And so if you go into the S fund, which is the stock fund, you're in the S&P 500. That's what you own. Nobody's managing that money for you. So it's a little bit different than more of a traditional 401k plan. But again, you look at the 401k plans and you may have 70 options. And how is somebody supposed to figure out from all of those options which one's right for them?
When you're saying options, you're saying there could be mutual funds, there can be exchange-traded funds, there are bond funds, and then maybe even now some of those target date funds.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm pressing you on, sir, is how are people doing with their own investments? Are they doing okay? I mean, you've seen people now who have accumulated 20 or 30 years of assets. Are they choosing the right allocations for themselves?
The answer is some are and some aren't. And, we see people that have come in that have kind of done things themselves, and they've actually done a pretty good job. They've recognized, hey, now I'm transitioning into retirement. I really need a professional involved, and they're kind of enlisting us to do that. And then we also have people that come in that say, you know what, when things went bad in 2008, I went to cash and I never got back in.
Right.
And so,
they've just lost out on the 14-year bull run,
right.
The longest bull run in the markets of U.S. history.
So it just depends.
Yeah.
So it's there's so much information out there. You know, we've done, you know, shows in the past that you can Google yourself to retirement disaster, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, when we look at the different options that are out there, it's very confusing for people. And a lot of times people are getting advice from a coworker, or, you know, maybe their
or
supervisor,
their brother, or their friend, or their
Right.
neighbor, or their parents. And this is one of the things that we were bringing up. As you were mentioning, this is actually a 3-show series. It's a special program and set of programs right now on retirement planning. Right now, we are just literally loading up the basics of the kinds of things that are in your retirement plans, the different choices between tax deferred or paying your taxes right now. And at this moment, we're getting a little bit into funds. But at the beginning of the program, what we were pointing out is that retirement today is different than it was for our parents. So your parents may have been able to retire successfully, or your grandparents, but today it is totally different, in part because of how different the funds are. We're not getting that pension. How about, I'm going to throw one thing at you, a little bit of a curveball. Okay. What about Social Security? Is this just as reliable as it was for our parents or grandparents?
Well, I mean, according to Social Security, no. I mean, if you look at that little statement that comes out, and it's online now, I don't guess they actually mail it to us anymore, but the online statement says, you know, by 2030, whatever, that they're only expecting us to get, you know, 70-some% or 80% of the number that we're actually seeing on the screen. Now, you know, I have a little bit different takeaway from that, and this is just purely my opinion, but I mean, to me, it would be suicide if I'm in Washington trying to get reelected to mess with Social Security. I mean, that just seems like a heavy lift to ever have. Maybe
nobody wins an election saying we are going to reduce Social Security.
Right? Maybe if term limits happened, then they've got nothing to lose. But I find that, you know, some of the largest voting base in Social Security. So
yeah,
maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm sure it'll change. Everything changes. But I mean, I feel fairly secure that a version of it is going to continue to be around. Will it be exactly the same? Will it be? Will there be income limits? Will they change the taxation on it? You know, there's a lot of tweaks that could happen, but will people still get a check? I think so.
Okay, all right. Well, I know that there's a lot of confusing information when it comes to our own retirement plan. So one of the things that Tim wants to do here, one of the creators here of the Retirement Blueprint, is making sure that you, Dayton, have a retirement blueprint yourself. So do yourself a favor. Call the phone number you see right there at the bottom of the screen. Obviously, we're broadcasting right now. Tim isn't going to pick up the phone right this minute. But Tim is going to reach back out to you to see if you need help putting together this retirement planning strategy. It is complimentary, but you need to reach out to us here. 855-684-3485. We're going to take a very short break. Oh, we're going to have a very fun discussion here, because Tim and I are going to discuss costs inside your retirement investments when we get back right after this break.
Unexpected events, like a global pandemic, can turn our world upside down overnight. They can cause volatile shifts that may cause you to question the confidence in your current retirement plan. As a retiree or a pre-retiree, knowing you have a plan that can withstand the worst economic conditions is vital. Contact us today for a complimentary review. Get a second opinion and learn more about our trademark process, the Retirement Blueprint. Let us plan your tomorrow today.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I am your host, Spike Spengel. We're talking today about your retirement plans and how are they working out for you. Now, Tim, you and I have talked about this pre-show, and folks, I got to admit, it got pretty heated in a good way. So I want to bring this up. We look at our investment choices inside the retirement plan. Let's say we've got 10 of them, right? Mm-hmm. We've got a few different stock ones, a few different bond ones, maybe an international fund or two, right? Mm-hmm. And since I've been around the industry a little bit, I tend to look at the cost. Mm-hmm. What is the cost basis inside that fund?
Sure.
Now, I would say, though, that most Americans, and this is not at fault to them, what they probably do first is look at the returns of that fund. What did it do the last 6 months, the last year, the last 5? And you're going to pick the one that maybe has good single-digit or even double-digit returns. I want the 10 or the 11 or the 12%.
Right.
But then you stopped me and said, no, Spike. You think you're doing yourself a favor by looking at low-cost funds. You don't completely agree with that, do you?
Well, I don't, this isn't a quick answer, but when you're looking at cost, you've heard the old adage, cost is an issue in absence of value, and so I don't mind paying a expense if I'm getting something for it.
Okay.
And so the idea here is, for what most people, as you said, they look at returns. You look at cost. I would say you're both right. So what we want to do is we want to look at returns over here, and we want to look at cost, and we want to do the math. Okay. So, for example...
All right, and what I was going to say is, how does a person like me do that math?
Well, I mean...
Or the viewer out there. I mean, that's tough math.
There's a version of information with the prospectus and all that. It's not entirely accurate, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's a whole thing, and our phones will light up with calls of people saying, "Well, that's not the way I read it." So we'll skip that portion of the talk. Okay. But the idea is, and I'm just going to do simple math. So let's say, for example, that we have a international fund, which is typically more expensive to manage, and we'll say it's 2% a year to have that fund. But it got a 10% return, minus the 2% fee, I got an 8% total return.
Okay.
Or we could look at the fee that is, say, an index fund, and there's almost no fee to it, but got a 6% return. So which one do you want? It's about the net return in your pocket. Your pocket return is what you want to look at. And I think the industry does a bad job of this, is they want to, everybody comes into the office and they're like, well, my advisor said that I got this return, but when I did the math, it didn't work out. I'm like, well, that was your gross return. That was before expenses and fees and all those other things. And so it is very confusing. At the end of the day, if you start with $100,000 and December 31st it's worth $110, I don't care what the pie chart says, you made $10,000. If it's worth $95, you lost $5,000. But yet, you can look on statements sometimes, and the number they say that you got is completely different than where the math actually works out.
Okay. Now, are folks getting this kind of advice inside their retirement plans as well? Because it seems to me every time that I've ever worked for an employer, I go in, I make those choices myself. Maybe I've got some online information that'll tell me that if I save a certain amount, this is theoretically how much I could have down the road.
Right.
But there doesn't seem to be anybody out there giving me the investment advice of which ones I should pick. Basically doing this simple math. Well, where am I supposed to find that info? Where's the viewer supposed to find that information?
Well, I can tell you the reason why, and since we're on alphabet soup, it's ERISA. Everybody is scared to death an employer's not going to take on that risk. And so what we have gotten in the industry is it's self-learned. So we're going to put all this information on a website, and you can log into Fidelity, into your 401k account, and you can watch videos, and they have these calculators and all these different tools that you have to figure out and use properly to come up with the right answer.
Yeah.
And versus having an actual person, I mean, it's almost the equivalency of being your own doctor. You're trying to self-diagnose on...
That's what I mean. I mean, it's great. Because I want to be fair to the large corporations out there and the companies that provide these 401ks or 457. Yes, there are websites and they provide you information, and there are videos, and there are calculators that tell you if you save this much in this fund and it theoretically... I appreciate that, but you're still putting it on me. And you could be talking to somebody who owns their own business. They could be a plumber. They could be a heart surgeon. They could be a rocket scientist. Yet now they also have to be a financial expert in planning for their own retirement. Right. So I did want to ask you this. There used to be rules and laws about outside advisors being able to give advice on people's retirement plans. Have some of those walls crumbled a little bit? For instance, are you, as a retirement blueprint creator, are you able to help people figure out their retirement plans now?
And so the rules have changed a little bit.
Still not perfect.
They're still not perfect. And so there's still limitations to what, I'm the planning guy. So I don't do the wealth management part of the stuff in our office. We have, a team that does that. And we've talked about this subject in our meetings often of, how can we best assist, but then you've got these rules and these lines that you have to stay in to be able to help people. And so, there's a long way to go in the industry for people to get the help that they really need.
All right. Well, one of the things I want to do, I want to circle back all the way to the beginning of the program in case you missed it. So let's talk about a 401k and this phrase you said, an in-service withdrawal. I think there's a lot of folks out there who don't know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
You're not ending your 401k, you're not stopping your contributions, and you're not getting rid of it. Can you explain what an in-service withdrawal is for folks and
Sure.
why that's such a wonderful option?
Yeah. And so one of the greatest things that happened with 401ks is at 59 and a half, they changed the rules that would allow somebody that's still working, which is most of us, to be able to roll over their 401k while they're still employed. It's called an in-service rollover, self-described, right? It's not, our industry's not original
in-service,
on
meaning we're
titles.
still working.
Still working.
Okay, all right.
And that allows you unlimited options. And so it gives an employee the ability to move over to maybe their current advisor, to utilize the different investments available within their IRAs, which are typically a lot more robust than what you would normally see inside of a traditional 401k plan.
So that's something, and then also so some of these other, the teacher plans, police officer plans, government plans, sometimes they even retire at full retirement age at their work a little bit earlier, so 55, 57, meaning what we're trying to say is that you might have the option for an in-service withdrawal, or your state or the government might allow you to actually speak with a firm like yourself to be able to give you a bigger picture and a better idea of how to retire, correct?
Exactly.
All right. Well, Tim, like you said, this is going to be a 3-part series on retirement planning. We're going to continue to talk about retirements, exactly how much we should be saving and so forth. And I also know that you'll do a complimentary review for folks. So we'll take a look at their investments, a little bit of their tax strategy, legacy planning, and health, all of that combined?
Yes.
All right. Tim, we're going to wrap up today's program. Thank you so much. We're going to be back again. Folks, if you would like your own retirement plan review, or maybe even start your own retirement plan if you haven't, all you got to do is call the phone number you see right here. It is complimentary to our viewers, 855-684-3485. Thank you for watching The Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. We'll be back again next week.